we couldn't dream, we couldn't think, we couldn't talk about our issues. We were supposed to repeat what the government tells you to say.
I'm here with Dalia Al-Aqidi. Dalia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So you grew up in Iraq. You've spent about 20 years as a journalist. You're running for Congress. You're fighting against anti-Semitism. You're blowing the whistle on radical Islam. Talk to us a little bit about your life story. How did you end up being the Dalia that's here with us today?
Well, I was born in Baghdad. My family, my parents are considered pioneer in Iraqi modern theater. So I'm not your typical Middle Eastern child. We were very open. My parents were well educated, and they made me read Gone with the Wind when I was in third grade. Um, I grew up in several countries in the Middle East with my parents, and then um, I um, I left Iraq for good, or I fled my country with my mom back in 1988, and then I started. Working with the Iraqi opposition. I was very active with the Iraqi opposition against the dictatorship of Saddam Hussein. So that journey took me to different places, different countries. We established a radio station, Radio of Free Iraq, to fight the oppression of the Iraqi people until I met a friend in Saudi Arabia when I was working. His name was Chris Stevens, who was the US ambassador to Benghazi, who was killed by radical Islamism. Um, he's the one who made it possible for me and my family, and he's the one who convinced me that my place would be in the United States, to be free, um, uh, to be whoever I wanted to be without any restrictions. Um, that country gave me the freedom, gave me the wings to fly, and I love this country. This is my home, and we moved legally in 1993. So I've been a journalist for like 37 years, and probably now I'm not a reporter as I used to. I'm too old for that now. You know what I mean. But I've covered war zones from Iraq to Afghanistan to Lebanon, terrorist attacks in Europe. So I've been around, and now when I see what's happening in my hometown, in my country, and in my district, with people like Ilhan Omar and Zohran Mamdani and others, um, it's my duty to step up again and say enough is enough. I'm fighting you until the last moment of my life, because I'm used to fighting all the um, um, dictatorships and all the ideologies that are not good for us as human beings, including radical Islamism, including socialism.
So we'll get back to Ilhan Omar and talk about your campaign. Just for listeners' background, you ran against her in the last election, and then you're now running against her in the next election. So we'll get to that. I'll also want to ask you about Zohran Mamdani, because we're recording on November 6th, and the news of the election was just 2 days ago. But before we go there, talk about your upbringing. You know, most Americans, I'm guessing no one who's listening to this podcast really understands what it is like to grow up in Iraq as a young girl. So talk about a little bit what that culture was like, and also what was your relationship with Islam? Did you grow up culturally Islamic? Were you religious? Was there some moment in your head where you realized, oh my goodness, you know, the type of Islam around me is, you know, too conservative and radical?
Danielle, you nailed it. Nobody ever asks me culturally Muslims. They're always like, "Oh, you're a Muslim, so you're supposed to do this or that." No,
Can
I
I
grew
can I
up.
tell you why?
Yeah.
Because my wife's family is Persian. They're Persian Jewish. And I
Uh
talk
huh.
about this on the podcast a lot. The Persian Jewish community, especially before they immigrated to America in 79, they were traditional and culturally Jewish in a way that doesn't really fit our sort of Western stereotype of religious and not religious. And so, you know, the whole idea of religion is very much a Western thing. And so that's why I asked it like that.
You nailed it. You nailed it, Danielle. Bravo. Yes, I was culturally. I grew up as a like in a Muslim country, in a very moderate Muslim family. I was sent to a like Christian boarding school in Lebanon when I was 5. So we were very open. We celebrated Eid. It's the Muslim a holiday, and we celebrated Christmas as well. But this is not the traditional family or Middle Eastern family that you see actually on TV and you'll hear about regularly. The thing is, it was when you live in such an environment with oppression and dictatorship, it doesn't, it's not about religion anymore. It's about you as a human being. It's about freedom as your personal freedom. Growing up in Iraq's Saddam Hussein, um we weren't we couldn't dream, we couldn't think, we couldn't talk about our issues. We were supposed to repeat what the government tells you to say. We're supposed to think the way the government wanted us to say. We were supposed to hate Israel and the Jews since we were 5, because the Jews are evil and they want to kill us all. So we, growing up, by the age of 6 or even younger, that you have to sing like, oh, let's defeat Israel, let's kill the Jews are this. That's how people in that region grew up. um so no wonder why we see that hatred in that region, and towards Israel, and towards the Jews as well. Because uh, when you're here, when you're in the United States, like, I don't want to talk about Israel as a country, because I'm talking about Jewish Americans. I'm not talking like, okay, go hate Israelis and the anti-Semitism that we see now. It's not about Israelis. The anti-Semitism that we're seeing now, it's about the American Jews. That's the difference. So growing up there, and seeing the how women especially have been oppressed by religion, and by politics, um, that what pushed me to go out. That what pushed me to be very vocal, to say, look at me, I have a brain, I can think, I can work, I can speak, and I can dream. That's why I left that region, and that's why I reject anybody who wants to import these ideologies back to here. Otherwise, why did we even leave? Why did we leave our homeland? Why did we leave our people? There was a reason for it. And um, and that's why you see me, I'm very, very vocal when it comes to oppression, when it comes to socialism, when it comes to dictatorship, when it comes to freedoms. Because freedom, you don't know what freedom is unless you lose it. And I believe that we are losing our freedoms in this country, probably in the West.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of, brave Muslim women like yourself who have, similar stories, albeit from different countries. And the question that I'm always interested in getting their thoughts as, and, I identify, I say that I'm a begrudging liberal. We can sort of unpack that in a little bit if you want. But one of the things I think that liberals in the West should be doing is upholding stories like yours, because the society that you came from is probably one of the most illiberal societies in the world. Yet what you've seen, or what I've seen in America and also in Europe over the last generation or so, is liberals, or more so progressives, actually not being willing to criticize radical Islam, and instead, this sort of strange type of moral equivalency of, well, we can't really contradict and, their way of life and, whatever. And I've never really understood that, because if you care about feminism and equal treatment and egalitarianism and, basic things like LGBTQ rights and freedom of religion, these are all liberal ideas, then you should be spending most of your time speaking out against what's happening in most Muslim countries. So what has your interaction been with progressives? And I'm not talking about the Muslim community in America. I'm going to ask you about that in a minute. But with progressives in America that you've been talking to, I mean, you're running as a Republican, so I'm guessing you don't identify as an American progressive, but what has those conversations been like? Because I would imagine, or I would hope, an American progressive would want to plaster you all over every billboard in town, which obviously they're not doing it.
Absolutely, absolutely. The first thing, oh, you're anti-immigrants. Oh, you're Islamophobe. Oh, you are anti-women. And it's funny enough, I still identify as a Muslim. I never said anything else. As you said, I'm culturally Muslim, and my faith is between me and my creator. I shouldn't even have to explain it. It's nobody's business. However, I do identify myself as a Muslim. Um, but the thing is, um, there is a difference between being a Muslim and being an Islamist. Muslim is a faith like any other faith. It's between you and your creator. Nobody has the right to judge. Nobody has the authority to tell you, oh, you're a real Jewish, or you're a real Christian, or you're a real Muslim. Nobody has the right. Nobody has the authority to do so. So let's put it aside. Now, when it comes to radical and political Islamism, that's a different story. The term Islamophobia was created by the Muslim Brotherhood, and the reason is very clear, to blur that line between being a Muslim and Islamist. So if you criticize so and so for her policies or for her statements or for his actions or you name it, if that person is a Muslim, then they use the Islamophobia. You're criticizing that person because of their actions or their policies or their statements, not because of their religion. But that term being used in politics, and it's been used for the past 20, 30 years, and especially the past 20 years heavily, that's when they want to shut the conversation. They want to stop you from criticizing them, because identity politics play here. So if you're criticizing me, then you are Islamophobe. You're criticizing me just because I'm a Muslim, not because I said something wrong, or not because you don't like what I stand for. So that term has been weaponized by Islamists in North America, in Europe, and everywhere else. This is why I'm against using that term, because that's the way they shut the conversation. That's it. If you criticize radical or political Islamism, then you are Islamophobe. We need to get rid of this term, because this term is a term that oppressors use to shut you up. That's number one. Number two is radical Islamists. They don't hide what they want to do. It's just we in the West don't want to believe them, or don't even listen to them. They tell you exactly what they want to do. They tell you exactly how they organize. They tell you exactly how they mobilize. They tell you exactly where they get their money from. They tell you exactly who their friends are, who their allies are. But then people don't want to listen to them. Like what happened in October 7th. Hamas has been saying this. They've been saying it for the longest time. Okay, we want to do this to the Jews. We are planning to do this to the Jews. They told us from the river to the sea, and they will do it again and again and again and again. in Muslim Brotherhood, they tell you, we want to infiltrate the West. We want to infiltrate their systems. We want to use their systems and their human rights laws against them. They tell us, it's just we don't listen and we refuse to question them, because then we would be called Islamophobes or anti-immigrants or so and so.
And I'm sure you've been called Islamophobic also,
Oh
you know,
yeah, yes.
which again is just sort of, I think, par for the course. Something I've always wondered, and I'm trying to think how to word this more sharply. So there's a phenomenon that I've, observed, and this is very, armchair observation. So let me know if, you disagree with either my portrayal of this, or I'm kind of interested in the psychology of, the Islamic immigrant community. You have a situation where both in Europe and in America over the last 20 or 30 years, people have fled, for one reason or other, war-torn Islamic countries for the West. And presumably they're coming to places like Germany, France, England, or United States because they understand that this is a culture where they're not going to have to worry about, say, Assad gassing people, or, any other, conflicts of, random terrorist activity, Boko Haram, all of those things. But yet when they come here, instead of embracing, liberalism and, freedom of speech and religion and everything, they tend to then propagate and subsequently vote for similar policies to what ruined their countries in the first place. And I would love to understand, one, if you disagree with that portrayal, let me know. But I'm kind of interested in that psychology a little bit of people who flee to the West from Islamic countries, and instead of, I don't know, I'm thinking of, Jews, right? So the biggest wave of immigration of Ashkenazi Jews to America was after 1880, until America made it much tougher to immigrate in 1920. And these were Jews fleeing Eastern Europe, and they were fleeing, early on the Tsar, who was, this despotic leadership who, right, there was no freedom. And so many Jews got to America and threw themselves behind anti-totalitarian movements, right? Socialism, a lot of Jews supported that, and liberalism. And this sort of became the, and the modus operandi of Jews in America because of their activity in the Tsar. And, the LA, let's say, Jewish Persian community, right? It's sort of the same thing, right? A lot of them fled after the revolution in 79. And
Mhm.
so a lot of them vote for explicitly policies on the complete other end, right? So the revolution in Iran was brought about by both Islamist and left-wing radicals. So,
Exactly.
so what I always say is I've never met an LA Persian Jew who's on the left, right? I'm sure one or two of them exist, but like in the Islamic community, that's not often the case. And I want to understand that psychology better.
Look, if we're talking about three different types of people, of groups. Group number one, a small group that is very vocal about the danger of the radical Islamism. This is a very small group. That's why you found me, and probably you'll find very few Muslims that are willing. Not because because now there is not a big group that is from Muslims that are against terrorism, that are against, but uh, it's it's dangerous even when you are in a country, when you are away. It's dangerous for a Muslim to speak up. Like you saw the Iranians, since we're talking about the Iranian activist who in New York, that the Iranian regime, the IRGC, wanted to execute her. We face Muslims that are against that ideology, face threats on a daily basis. So there's this group. There's a group that they agree with, but they are quiet because there are, in every state, there are organizations, NGOs, and even the local mosques that that meet with all the majority of Muslims. So if a Muslim with his family, which he has no, or they have no political agenda, but if they talk or they speak against the political Islamism, then they'll be cast out from their own community. So they choose to stay quiet. And there is that group that is easy to be radicalized because they've been, even if they left their country, they still listen, of their Muslim countries, they still listen to that narrative that the Christians and the Jews are against you, and you're the Muslim, and we need to fight. We need to bring Islam to everywhere we go. This is the group that scares the hell out of me, because this is the group that it's easily radicalized, easily pushed to, like what we saw in Dearborn, Michigan, before Halloween, that easily they could commit crimes and could commit terrorist uh, attacks. So this is the difference. However, a Muslim family would stay. All families of all immigrants, what they want a better future for their kids, they want good education, and they want to keep their traditions within their houses. Some of them would want to move further down, to get involved into politics, to bring to bring what they left with them, because what they left for maybe better jobs, better future, but they still don't have a problem. They'd rather see a mosque in every street other than seeing the flags of the LGBTQ all over their neighborhood. So
I want to
it's
eventually ask you about your interaction with the American Muslim community, but before we do that, just on immigration, immigration is something that I've been, relatively quickly changing my mind on, because of a couple trips I've taken to Europe over the last couple years, and just the impossibility of being publicly Jewish there. And I think, again, from a Jewish perspective, it's kind of tough because the Jewish community, and one of the reasons why, Jews still are overwhelmingly liberal, is because Jews were probably the people who got the most screwed over by lack of immigration options in the 20th century, for obvious reasons, when virtually every country closed the borders for Jews trying to flee Nazi Germany. So Jews have always had a very soft spot for, open immigration. And, there was so much money put into like the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, HIAS, in the 20th century and such. But it seems like it makes sense. And I'm kind of, wondering what you're thinking of, to almost have not, of course, national or ethnic litmus tests like, some people on the far right are proposing, but ideologic litmus tests in countries like the West, right? If America is a melting pot, right? The beauty of America is that it's not built on an ethnic background, no matter how much people on the far right might want to claim it is, right? America is built on a series of ideas, right? Perhaps America has not always lived up to those ideals, but at least, those are the ideals that America is all about. And so it seems to me, if we want to give somebody the sort of golden ticket to immigrate here, not that they have to agree with us on everything, but they have to generally agree with the wider framework of our ideals, such as free speech, freedom of religion, freedom from religion, right? All of these things. And so I'm wondering how your life story and your politics, how does this change the way that you see the immigration debate in both America and Europe, right? One of the, just the last thing I'll say is the writer David Frum, who's, a conservative, but a never Trumper conservative. He has this great line that he writes. He's a writer for The Atlantic. And he says, if liberals refuse to enforce borders, people will elect fascists to do it. And, right, this seems like it seems like the inevitable future of Europe is for the hard right to increasingly be getting more and more votes as many people feel like their entire life and culture is changing in front of their eyes. Now, what the progressives will answer is, well, this is just racism, right? This is just people trying to preserve some, ethnic purity, but it's not, right? I have no problem with somebody of a different nationality or ethnicity, right? I live in Irvine, California. Just looking around on my street, there's probably 20 different countries in my neighborhood of, 50 families here. But I don't want to live next to somebody who fundamentally believes that I deserve to die for not believing in what they want to believe, whether they're Christian or, Muslim or any other religion. So
yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's the thing. There is a difference between we're talking about the immigration system and talking about paths to citizenship, etc., and between and talking about open borders. These are totally two different issues because number one, as you said, the United States was built on immigration, and everybody is welcomed, and the immigration system, yes, it has there are loopholes in them. However, um, people, until this moment, there are millions of people that legally wanted to immigrate to the United States are still waiting all over the world, not only in the Middle East, not only in everywhere else, because truly people behind our borders believe that that's when you go to America, you will have the right to pursue your American dream, because you could be anything, you could be anybody, and you could do anything you want to do. These people have been vetted. The majority of these people, when they go through the process, they go through, and I went through that process, heavily vetted to know the background of these people, to make sure that we're not allowing terrorists coming in, or we're not allowing criminals to come in. And this what made America wonderful for years and years, because people will come. You walk in the street, you see a falafel street, you see a Maison Margot French restaurant, you see a Belgian bar. You know, that's what makes us who we are. That's what makes us Americans. However, when you stand against open borders, that's a totally different thing. You're not anti-immigrants. You are asking your government and the country to do its job. The government's job is to protect the safety of every citizen or every resident on its soil. But with having that open borders, you have no idea who A or B or C are. We don't know who they are, and especially when they come from war-torn countries, that they cannot be vetted in their own countries. These are the difference between what you said is the left or the right. And I'm not talking about far left or far right. This is different. But I'm talking about the left and the right. Yes, we do believe, I personally, as a Republican, as a politician, I do believe that people have the right to pursue their dreams, and they have the right to come to the United States. It's a privilege, not a right, but there is a path for them to come legally to the United States after being vetted, after being questioned. And I truly believe that we need to close our borders, because we don't know who these people are. I've lived in England a couple of times throughout my life. You as an American, if you go to London, you cannot stay one day after 6 months. You cannot work because you're there as a tourist, or you're there as a visitor. So why it's okay for Europe to treat us this way, and then the far left would go crazy? Oh, you're anti-human rights because you're not allowing these people to work, or you're not allowing these people to live in your own building. If it's raining outside, if you live in a condo building, would you open the door to the lobby and let the homeless people inside your own condo building? No, you wouldn't do that, because you don't know who these people are. That's how we should
Well,
think about it.
yeah, I mean, this kind of, I mean, the far left is a little bit consistent. I disagree with them, but right, they would say the whole idea of nation states anyway is a sham, and so that's sort of why they're anti-border. I mean, again, it's sort of disastrous policy, and so we don't really have to go down that rabbit hole. I'm curious. I both want to hear about your personal politics, but before I ask you about, why you're a Republican and everything like that. What is your relationship with the local Muslim community? Like, how, do you spend time going to mosques? Are you going to social events? Are you sort of treated as persona non grata?
When it comes to mosques, mosques not for women. You go to mosque only if you pray. Mosque is not like it's not somewhere you go to have an event, and especially for women. So no, I connect to people because they're people. I don't connect with people based on their faith. So I go and walk in my neighborhood, and I talk to the atheists and the Christian and the Jews and the Buddhists, and I don't look at them this way. I reach
No,
out to
it's a lovely answer, and I think that's a great ideal. But I'm curious, just in terms of, obviously different groups organize around religious or ethnic identities, whether or not that's good or not, that's a separate question. But, in the Islamic community, I mean, with,
yeah,
various
yeah, yeah,
political
yeah.
organizations, like I'm
Like
curious how they interact with you.
yes, yes, community, like Muslim community leaders. I have a relationship with a few of them who agree with me that the Muslim Brotherhood is one of the biggest threats, not only to the world but to Muslims themselves. So I do have a relationship with community leaders, and based, if you think based on faith, I go to synagogues, I go to Muslim gatherings, and yeah, I go to Christian gatherings. Yeah, I'm reaching out to different communities separately. I thought you asked something else, but yes, I do, and some of them think they from not the Ilhan Omar supporters think that I do understand um, the struggle that they're going through, especially now between being a normal immigrant, not being painted by a religion, um, and because what they hear is the Islamophobia is the Islamophobe is the Islamophobe. So people want. I've met so many families that don't want to be judged based on faith, because they all want the exact same thing. They want to live with dignity. They want great future for their kids, and they want to live in peace.
Talk to us a little bit about Ilhan Omar and Zohran Mamdani. I don't know if you would, explicitly connect the politics of the two, but, what is so troubling from your perspective about, let's start with Omar just because she's in your district. What is so troubling about her politics?
You mentioned earlier Iran in 1979. That's exactly what we're facing now. We're facing is a marriage between the radical and political Islamism, and between the socialist, and that's what we're thinking. My problem, let me tell you what my problem with Ilhan Omar. I saw Ilhan Omar, uh, or Ilhan Omar came under my radar back in 2018 during the United Nations General Assembly. Back then, or I'm still, I was working on a project about the Muslim Brotherhood, and back then, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the Turkish president, was the godfather of the Muslim Brotherhood. So Erdogan came to New York, and out of the blue, I saw like small news clip that the Turkish president met with a young woman, a young Somali woman from the Midwest. And who facilitated that meeting? CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, which is the front of the Muslim Brotherhood. Uh, so I kept like wondering, why would the Turkish president meet with this woman in New York? After not too long after that, Ilhan Omar was elected the first time. So back then I was living in DC, so I started sending her office emails. Hey, let's talk, from an immigrant to an immigrant, from a woman to a woman, from a Muslim to a Muslim. I would like to interview you, especially when I watch Al Jazeera. And I watch Al Jazeera Arabic, not Al Jazeera English. And if you watch Al Jazeera Arabic and Al Jazeera English, you'll see totally two different channels, two different ideologies. I speak Arabic, so I watch it. So I've seen what the why they've been praising her so much.
Well,
So
let's unpack that a bit for listeners. I'm guessing most of my listeners have never heard Al Jazeera Arabic. What are the salient differences?
uh, Al, Al, Al Jazeera English would be a normal, like any other English channel. Al Jazeera Arabic, the Al Jazeera and Qatar, um, Al Jazeera plays on the emotions of the of their viewers. They're so anti everything that the world or the free world believes in. Anti-Semitism, you name it, anti freedoms, anti everything, you name it. They praise every. Let's say they were the channel for Bin Laden. Bin Laden was back then. Every time he has a statement, the first news network that releases it is Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is so in bed with the radical Islamism that it's not even funny, and Qatar uh, is as well. So when you watch Al Jazeera Arabic and you see them painting Ilhan Omar as if she's going to free Muslims from in the United States and in the world from the oppression of the West, and she's going to uh, fight for Muslims and all this BS that has no base. Al Jazeera is part of the networks that radicalize people.
Mm.
That's basically it. So, anyways, I started sending her. I just wanted to talk to her about political Islamism, about radical Islamism, and especially about what happened in Egypt when the Muslim Brotherhood took over, and what happened in Tunisia, and especially the Muslim Brotherhood are being um, uh, are, are leaving the Middle East because they have no place in the Middle East anymore. The last place was in Tunisia after they fell in Cairo. In Tunisia, a few years ago, that the people uprose against the Muslim Brotherhood and radical Islamism. Anyway, so my email started bouncing back, and it showed that I was blocked, or my email was blocked. So I decided to come to Minneapolis. That's in 2018, and that's when I fell in love with that with this city. It's a beautiful city. You should come and visit. And
I
that's
actually
when I
have. I
decided.
did a week-long canoe trip in Boundary Waters 2 summers
Wow,
ago with a friend. So we flew in and out of Minneapolis. We spent, half a day in the city. It was nice, but the Boundary Waters was just incredible. Just for listeners, it's about like 5 hours north. It's on the Canadian border. So beautiful area.
it's such a beautiful city. It's such a beautiful city, and and that city and that state deserves someone much better than Ilhan Omar, much better than somebody who plays identity politics, and much better than calling anybody who is white male as an oppressor. Because our problems are far more um, complicated than this. We have a security and safety issue. We have economic issues. That's what we're suffering here in our district. We are ground zero for anti-Semitism as well after October 7th. So we have so many issues that I believe Ilhan Omar would not be the person. Ilhan Omar, the consequences of what Ilhan Omar was doing or has been doing for the past 7, 8 years, it's division and it's hatred, and we shouldn't allow her to continue to spread that.
Talk to us a little bit about your relationship or your views of Trump. I'm curious, just you can even start, broad view, the last 8 or 9 years, or, in the last couple of months, like what has your interaction been? And also, have you always been a Republican from the time you got here, or was
Yeah.
that a political evolution?
No. I've been always a Republican. I've been always a conservative. It's like my ideas, my ideas and my views align with the conservative. When it comes to Trump or any other president, look, I came from a country that worships uh, its leaders. So I refuse to say I believe in one president against one president. I look at presidents as not as who they are, as what they do. If President Biden did something wrong, I'll say, okay, this is wrong. If President Trump did something wrong, I'll say this is wrong. So I've never ever, since I came to the since I became legally, I could vote. I never voted based on party. I always vote on issues, and I always vote my conscience to see if this is good, something good for us, or bad. I voted for a Democrat because at one point I thought the Republican candidate was bad for us as a state, and I voted for the Democrat candidate. So that's who I am.
And then what's your sentiment of, Trump, at least let's say this term? I mean, do you like what's been happening on questions of immigration and tariffs and foreign policy? We can, Russia, Ukraine, we talk about Israel and the recent peace treaty. Just like give us an overall grade for, how you felt in the last couple of months.
Look, I believe Trump's foreign policies approach is good. Just like I believed in Biden when Biden stood by Ukraine. I supported Biden for that, because we should support our allies. We should award our allies, not abandon them. I stood against Biden in what happened in Afghanistan. So I believe the foreign policy with the Republican Party has been always better with foreign policy. And I can give you an example, like President Barack Obama, who stood with the Muslim Brotherhood and radical Islamism in Egypt, and it turned out that was the worst thing ever. Or even Obama sending money to Iran on a plane. So that's when it comes to foreign policies. I believe that the Republicans have been always better than the Democrats. We have problems. Yes, we do have problems. The tariffs are good and bad. In some areas are good, but it's too early to see. It's too early to talk about what's happening between Ukraine and Russia, for example. We don't know. I really hope that things, when it comes to foreign policy, that Trump will be able to end wars just like he did. And one of the greatest thing and that President Trump has done is the Abraham Accord. He paved the road for peace in the Middle East, and even in the West in general. So this is a great thing. There are good things, there are bad things. You hate the guy, hate him. You don't like the way he talks. Yes, the majority of us don't. You don't like his personality. That's fine. But when things are good, we should say that things are good. When things are bad, we should say things are bad. And
totally. Yeah. No, I think he's done a great job in the Middle East. I actually, both the first term with the Abraham Accords and then also what he's been able to accomplish. I mean, even just this morning, I saw there was some flare up, between Israel and Lebanon and also Israel and Gaza again. But it's eons better. And just a little bit on Trump's foreign policy. I don't know if I've ever explicated this on the podcast before. But growing up, both the Republican and Democrat Party, I'm talking, in the 90s and early 2000s, sort of had a institutional consensus on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, where any normalization between Israel and the Arab world had to run through a two-state solution. And this is something that was believed by both the Republicans and the Democrats. And, you sort of had, this famous speech by, Vice President Kerry talking And, he had this like, famous line, or, Secretary of State Kerry, and he said, well, there's no chance that any Arab country is going to normalize Israel until there's a two-state solution. And, this was just like the entire framework. And, Trump came in the first term and just completely proved that framework to be wrong, with economic incentives over, again, this sort of like vague ideologic pretending to care about the Palestinians, but really just being, anti-Western, anti-Semitic. And so I think the Trump administration has just completely changed the paradigm for the future of the Middle East in a good way, in a way that even, I've spoken honestly about this on the podcast before. I have never voted for Trump, so I'm 0 for 3, but the one thing that like is tinging at me of like perhaps future regret of not having voted for Trump is, if we keep going down the successful path of the Middle East is, in 10 years from now, I might be ashamed to say, like, yes, I never voted for Trump. So that's my bit on the Middle East. I'm very willing to give him props there.
No. Exactly. Like so many presidents, and throughout the years, from the Camp David until now, we failed to achieve anything in the Middle East. Now with Trump, with the Abraham Accords, they proved that, you know what, let's work on economy, let's work together, let's build the bridges together, and that's how it started. And then whatever solution would be, it would be much easier, because now the Palestinians, and I'm not talking the Hamas, I'm talking the Palestinian people, have friends to negotiate their rights with. So they have the Emiratis, they have and soon it would be the Saudis. So this is the only way that they could push the terrorists away, and have a real solution. Let me tell you, when I went, I went to Israel 2.5 weeks after October 7th. I was worried. I'll tell you why. Because yes,
what prompted that trip? Just give us a little bit of background.
um, uh, because I wanted to go see with my own eyes. I've covered war zones all my life, so I wanted to go there and see with my own eyes what was happening, and to report and read about it, and then to tell the Jews that you're not alone. We are here, and we support you. And I went there to see what really happened. And I went down south to the kibbutz, and I saw with my own eyes. But before that, I was worried, because I've always heard that even if you have an American passport, or if you have a European passport, if you're from an Arab or Muslim origin, you'll be discriminated against when you go there. And actually, I was surprised that how I was welcomed there. I spoke more Arabic than English there. Everybody understood me. It was a great trip. It opened my eyes. That was my first time ever. I went to Jerusalem. It was one of the most beautiful. Forget about the circumstances, but it was one of the most beautiful thing to be able to go pray in the mosque, and pray in the church, and pray by the wall, and just pray for peace for everybody. Because you know what, religions and our faith should unite us, shouldn't be our faith shouldn't be a reason why we kill each other, why we fight each other. That's nonsense. And God is always all about love, um I just felt I was blessed to be there. I just felt I was blessed, and I was one. I supported the Abraham Accord for the longest time. I supported peace between, or the normalization. between Israel and Arab countries, because this is the only path forward. We cannot keep fighting forever. We cannot keep killing each other forever. There's always a path if there is a will.
What do you think is most misunderstood about the Jewish community in the Islamic community? In other words, if I was, I don't know, put in front of a room of, if I was invited to a mosque to give a talk and I was trying to dispel, wrongful stereotypes about Jews and Israel or Zionism, how do you think I can best accomplish that?
Oh God, you'll be like in general, it's like, okay, Israelis or Jews want to kill every Muslim around the world. That's what they teach kids. That's what I've been taught since since I was since I started going to school. It's like,
And was that
yes.
explicit? I mean, just for and even more so, was there? And I think I know the answer. I just want listeners to hear this explicitly. But was there any differentiation made between Israel and Jews, or when you talked
No, no,
about
no,
Israel?
no, 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 no. Never, ever, ever. No, they don't tell you. Okay, no, okay, you hear politicians talk about it, but I'm talking about the mass. No, Jews and Israelis are the same. It has, and Israeli, there are Israeli Christians, there are Israeli Muslims from the 1948. But no, Israel, and if you're an Israeli, if you're Jewish, it's the same thing, and that's my argument when I talk about the Jewish hatred in the United States or the Jewish hatred in my district. That um, um, I've been accused of being a Mossad agent just because I talk about anti-Semitism and just because I talk against the Jewish hatred. It's when you talk about when we try to address the issue of the Jewish hatred in the United States, in my district on college campuses. Um, this has nothing to do with foreign policy. You're not defending Israel or you're not defending Prime Minister Netanyahu. You're talking about Jewish Americans that have been targeted by by their colleagues and their peers just because of their faith. So this, but then again, I would be accused of, oh, you're defending Israel. But this has nothing to do with Israel. This is our communities. Just like when we defended Muslims after 9/11, when we said, okay, some of the Muslims are being attacked after 9/11. They have nothing to do with it. It's our duty as well to defend Jewish uh, after October 7th. Just they're Americans. We're all Americans.
Okay, so two more quick questions, and then I'm actually curious if you have any questions for me about the American Jewish community. But based off of your views and life experience, if you were advising both Israeli politicians, and so if Benjamin Netanyahu popped into the Zoom call and we're trying to discuss what Israeli policy should be over the next couple of years, what would you advise? And then if you were advising leaders in the American Jewish community against fighting anti-Semitism, what would you advise?
I would first say, and regardless of what I would say to Israel, do not allow any terrorist group be in charge. Do not give a break to Hamas. And I would say this to every leader. Hamas is a terrorist group. Hamas used hostages. Hamas used everything. Hamas used their own people as hostages. That's how they've been operating all their lives. So we should not make peace with a terrorist group, no matter what.
So you
And when
think
I
that the
talk,
ceasefire, just to read between the lines, the ceasefire that's still kind of holding now, you think Israel should eventually re-engage its war against Hamas?
no, 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 not at all, not at all. No, that's good. But I'm talking about the future, the peace agreement. What's going to happen after that? Hamas should not be part of any solution whatsoever. The Muslim Brotherhood should not be part of the solution whatsoever. And when I tell the American side, whatever you do, do not trust Qatar. Qatar is the problem in the Middle East. When
But
we're
then, I
talking
mean,
about
there isn't going to be a situation, right? There's either war or we're trusting some amalgamation of countries to actually send troops to get rid of Hamas. So, I mean, Hamas isn't going to, give up their weapons and give up power. So, someone needs to provide the, firepower. It doesn't, I can't really imagine
that's
European
what
countries.
that's what they're thinking. That's what they're thinking to have, which I support that. If we want boots on ground, then why not from the Arab countries? These are the people that they need to provide boots on ground to for peacekeeping. Why should we or anybody else? Arabs and Muslims, they are the ones who should, as when they talk about the Palestinian cause, that's what it should happen. Um, um, but the thing is, I trust Egypt. I trust UAE. I trust Saudi Arabia because, and I trust the countries that decided to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist group because they know the danger of this ideology. That's why I don't trust Qatar.
Got it. And so, on the flip side, other side of the Atlantic, what would you advise the American Jewish community when it comes to, dealing with people like Ilhan Omar or Mamdani or even, the anti-Israel college protests or, all the anti-Semitism we see coming from the left?
Uh, I don't. I cannot advise them. I mean, they are when we're talking because we're trying to address the anti-Semitism and the Jewish hatred. They should be very vocal about it. I would say this to every community, no matter what. Uh, be vocal and fight for your rights because nobody is going to fight for your own rights. Um, don't let them bully you. Don't let them shut you up with Islamophobia or with other accusations because that's what they're trying to do. Be vocal. When something is wrong, say it's wrong. Talk about radical Islamism. You are right. You're not wrong. Be vocal and don't let them bully you.
I'm curious if you have any questions about the American Jewish community or anything. I've never actually asked somebody this on a podcast before, but I'm just curious to throw that out there.
Um, I know that the majority of the Jewish community is liberal. My question is, do you still think that the progressive movement or the far left um, is the party that would you want to be represented by, knowing that how, and I'm talking about the far left, how um, the red and green alliance, how you would be one of the victims, just like many others.
Yeah, listen, I think especially after October 7th, Jews who are invested in Jewish community, right? You have I'm not going to give a percentage, but you have Jews that are not invested in Jewish community, and those tend to be the Jews on the far left. Most Jews who actually care about, their Jewish identity and Jewish community have, understand the far left to be a problem and have sort of removed themselves out of the progressive world. Historically, right, not just on issues of immigration, but issues of liberalism, free speech, right, freedom from religion, LGBTQ rights, abortion rights, right? These are issues that Jews overwhelmingly vote very liberal on because of, our history and, also a lot of Jewish traditional values. That said, given the far left's, recent, pushing out of anybody who has anything to do with Israel, I think we are seeing a lot of Jews shift and becoming a lot more centrist. On the other side, again, just in the last 2 weeks, the far right has begun to spurn out more anti-Semitism, right? With, the Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes partnership and all of
Yep.
this. So Jews,
Yep.
Jews are increasingly feeling like they're getting squeezed in from both sides. At this point, I don't consider myself either a Republican or Democrat. I am happy to vote for whoever I think has my best interests. And these days, it's almost 50-50 of whether or not they're going to be a Republican or Democrat. So I don't really care
You
about
know,
political parties. And I think what just to finish the thought, I think what Jewish community need to understand is that neither the Republican or Democratic Party cares about Jews, right? These are institutions and that are huge, and the nature of political institutions is they're going to do whatever they can to stay in power. And if that's one day going to be, we love Jews, that's great. If it's one day going to be we hate Jews, right, they'll also do that. And so I think Jews need to be very careful and not have their Jewish identity wrapped up in any specific political party or movement.
absolutely. And Danielle, what my dream is? My dream is to have the centrist of both, the moderates of the left and the moderates on the right to be united, because it's time for us to bring decency back, to bring conversation. It's okay to disagree. It's not okay to demonize each other. And you spoke about issues. I'm a Republican, that I've said it before in 2020. I am pro-abortion. I'm pro-life, but I'm not against abortion. I'll tell you why. I'm a woman, and I want my body. I want the full control of my body. If we want to be a pro-life, we have other ways to be pro-life. Instead of banning abortion, we can build institutions to support young pregnant women. We have better adoption system, instead of making adoption as a business. And instead of Americans going through to the world to adopt kids, we can have a legit and honest system that make adoptions in the United States much easier. That's how you are pro-life. You can support the young mothers after they give birth. That's how you're pro-life. So pro-life doesn't only mean that you are against abortion. I would never ever vote to ban abortion anywhere. I am a woman after all.
I think this was super interesting. I'm going to be following your Congress race, so best of luck. I'm curious. I mean, I hate to ask you this question, but I sort of have to. Do you think there's a realistic shot in you becoming more even?
It's very hard. It's very hard because we are in a very, very blue district. But what I'm trying to do is we're building a movement. We're building, because we cannot let people like Ilhan Omar and others just run randomly. We have to fight. And I believe if I wanted to be in Congress that easily, I could just I should have stayed in Virginia, Northern Virginia, and ran in a red district. My race is not about that. My race is to fight against these people. We have to. We have no other choice.
Well, I totally agree and very much appreciate it. So, Dalia, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And then maybe next year we'll talk again.
Sounds great. That would be amazing.